Can you hear me? Everyone hear me okay? All right. So we're going to get started now, and thank you so much again for being here today, and thanks to Brian for making this all possible. This wouldn't happen without him and all the wonderful sponsors. Yes, definitely, absolutely, yeah. All right, so this year's theme, information strategy and structure. I really thought that with this year's theme that we could take a step back and have an opportunity to really examine and understand what information truly is. And the reason why I want to do this is because there tends to be a bit of assumptions made as people who work in this industry as information architects, as content strategists, as designers, UX researchers. There's this assumption sometimes with ourselves and the people who hire us that we actually create information. And in fact, we do not. And in fact, we cannot create information. This is not possible. We can only create content. That's the only thing that we can do. And information is not content. And that is really the crux of this talk right here. We are going to explore information and content, the difference between the two, and why this is so important to understand, and the impact that it has on our work and the end users of our products. So if information is not content, what is information? Information is simply just the interpretation of content. It's what the end user walks away thinking after they have seen our designs, after they have read our copy, played with our products, whatever it may be. What do they walk away thinking and believing? That is information. And because of it, they are the only ones that can create it. The end user is the only one that can create information. It's like the number one thing I want you to walk away remembering. Okay. This was kind of new to me, and all became clear after reading Abby Covert's book, How to Make Sense of Any Mess. And I love this quote from her. We can only make content with the intention of communicating information. Intention. We cannot just assume just because we put it on the screen, people are going to walk away with the information that we hope they will. That is not a guarantee. We do not have 100% control over that. We have some control, which we'll talk about. But I love how she put it. So, if users are the only ones that can create information, how are they doing it? How do they create information? Well, you all are going to take a part right now in an exercise. So we're all going to be end users of Amazon right now, and we're all going to create some information together, okay? So let's assume we're shopping for some earbuds. And let's take a closer look at 3 different options here, okay? We have the first option, $467. So we're all audiophiles. We really like high-quality earbuds. But we can see here that 18 people have reviewed this, 4.5 stars. Second option, a little more expensive, $600, okay? And there's 4 stars here, and 36 people have reviewed it. And then look at this last product, $1,000 for earbuds, twice the cost of the first option. But something's missing. There's a piece of content gone. Where are the stars? They're just not there. What are some assumptions that we can make as to why there are no stars there? Anybody?
Nobody buys them, they're too expensive.
Nobody buys them, they're too expensive. Now that's great. Anybody else have go ahead? Yeah. It's a new product. It could be a new product. New product. Okay. Go ahead. The price speaks for its quality. And what does that say to you? What are your assumptions about the quality of this? It's what?
That they're really high quality.
Really high quality. So you don't even need to see the ratings to think that they're good based on the price. Okay, this is great. Go ahead.
Nobody's reviewed them yet.
Excellent. Okay, so nobody's reviewed them yet because they've had a good experience, and people who are more likely to give reviews if they have negative experiences. These are all great options. And the important thing is this is all information that we just created. Based off of what we see here, we start thinking, oh, these must be pretty good. Nobody gave a bad review. That's information. Everything else that we see here on the page, content. Now, what's really interesting is that end users are creating information based off of what they see and also what they don't see. And almost more importantly, I think the assumptions come from what they don't see. Now, look at this one too. Something here, only 7 left in stock, order soon. Someone tell me, what's an assumption as to why there's only 7 left in stock? Any guesses? Go ahead. Really popular. Any other guesses? Why only 7 left in stock? They're discontinuing. So 2 very different ones. So you could assume, wow, got to get them now, or, oh, maybe this is like last year's model, right? This is the information that we're creating. Let's talk about another example. Let's say we go to State Farm. We're looking for health insurance. We're in the market for private health insurance. And let's assume we've never had to do this before in our lives. We don't know what an out-of-cost expense is, out-of-pocket. We don't know these terms. We don't know a deductible. We could come here, and unless State Farm understands our domain knowledge or our lack of domain knowledge coming to the website, they could speak to us in gibberish. We wouldn't understand what they're talking about. But somebody else who comes to the site who's been through this process before, understands the terminology, they might be speaking their language. Unless State Farm really understands their users, they're not going to be communicating the information that they want. It'll just be content that they don't understand. My husband took this picture, and I love it. So we went to a bakery once, and what did we see? We saw pecan coconut sandies. Contains nuts. Okay, what are some assumptions we can make about the bakery owner here? Anybody? They don't want to get sued, right? Maybe they have before. Maybe they just have a very low expectation of their shoppers there. Who knows? But this is what we start thinking. Like, oh, wow, man, maybe they had an experience in the past. That's information. The reason why I put this example up here is because it's everywhere. We're inundated with content in every form, offline, online, and we really come away from this with our own information. It's what we take from it. And I'm going to talk about how we create that information, where it comes from. The important thing here to remember is that how we choose to display our products and our services really tells us what we think of our end users. It says a lot. That message there could be insulting to someone. It's like, you don't think I know that there's nuts in pecan sandies? You know, someone might be perturbed by that. You have to think that through. And the whole point to all of these examples is that 2 people can look at the same piece of content and walk away with very different information. And it's a perception problem, right? When you think about it, how do we interpret this? Is the glass half empty? Is it half full? It depends. It depends on your perception. It depends on who you are as a person, what your outlook is on life. Lots of things that we might not be able to control, but important for us to know. This is a content problem and a huge, huge challenge for information architects. But it's a fun one, I think. That's why I'm in this industry, because these are fun, complex problems, and there are answers. So let's talk about what influences interpretation. There are 2 things. The good first. The content that we deliver. We have 100% control over what we put in front of end users. And that's one of the 2 things that will influence them and their interpretation. So it's the content that's delivered and the end user. Now, The end user, that's a complex one, okay? There's a lot of things that makes up a person. When you think about domain knowledge, that's just one thing. How about their past experiences? How about relatable experience? Maybe they've never used a pair of earbuds before. They don't understand the fit. Maybe they've never shopped for health insurance before. What is their past related experience? But not only that, it's other things like how were they raised? What's their cultural beliefs and their core value structure? Things that really do matter if you're going to try to communicate a message to them that you want them to take action on. Now, end users are using enormous amounts of data, I love this picture, to actually interpret content. Data is all the facts, figures, observations, questions that you have about something. It's everything that we take in through our 5 senses. How do we know it rained last night? It's wet. It's wet on the ground. How do we know when we walk into a house that somebody's cooking a pot roast? We smell it. We're creating information. We are inundated with data 24/7. And data is something that we have to think about as content creators, as designers. What data can we manipulate, and what data are they exposed to in order to interpret our message correctly? So I read Abby's book. I really got deep into information. I'm like, all right, if this is a content problem, and we work on these problems, are we information architects or are we content architects? And I really thought about this, and then I came to the realization, no, absolutely not. Because if we go back to what I said earlier, the definition of information is all about the interpretation of content. And that's what we want, right? We want to make sure that when we design something or architect it in any way, that people take a desired action. And that's what we want control over. We don't want to just say, okay, I put the copy you wanted on the screen, or I designed that image you wanted. We want the end user to have the experience and make the goal that we set out for. So in that way, I think information is perfectly fitting. The problem with the title information architect is that everybody uses the term information wrong. Everybody thinks they're creating information, and they forget what it really means. So I like to think of information architecture as really outcome architecture. I like to think that we are outcome architects, because that puts at the forefront of every design decision that we make the outcome, the end goal. And that's what it's all about. It's not just making sure we have the right heading and the right spacing and it looks clear and clean and nice. It's also about, do they get the message? Is it interpreted correctly? Outcome architecture. Okay, so we're outcome architects now, right? How do we deliver on the desired outcome that we want? This is the fun part. This is the tricky part. Well, first thing you have to do, like I said, you have to know your users. Now, I specialize in user research and usability testing, so there's a bias slant here. I'm just going to put it right out there. You have to invest in this. And if you get pushback in the companies that you work for, do it anyway. I give you permission, okay? Because you will start off on a path of failure. You're going to create the wrong product with the wrong features, with the wrong messages that will not resonate with your end users. I see it over and over and over again. Time and money lost. You have to know exactly who's using your content and know the data that they will use to interpret your content. And you have to know what data that you can control. That's where your solution will be in understanding these things. Now, let's go back to that example again, the most expensive earbuds, okay? Lack of information there. No stars listed. No stars. Don't think that that was done just, nope, there's no data, we're not going to show it. Amazon knows what they're doing. They have a lot of researchers. They spend a lot of money on every design decision. This is on purpose. If I click on that, I do get to see that nobody has reviewed it yet. It's not that the site is malfunctioning or that they just I don't know, it's just not there for another reason. But if you look here, let's drop some stars in. Okay, 5 empty stars, big fat 0. That has a much bigger negative connotation than just nothing there. You might not think, whoever said it over there before, that, oh, these must be really good, that's why nobody reviewed them. When you see no stars next to something that has 4.5 or 5 stars, it changes the perception. So Amazon was really smart there. They said, okay, here's a lack of data that we have. Let's manipulate it in a different way. Let's show it in a different way. And I guarantee you they've probably tested this and seen much better results with no stars, and that's why it's not listed. And these are the things that we can do. These tiny little changes that can have really big impact on the interpretation of what that lack of data means. Okay, so I mentioned that I do research. One of the things that I always ask participants is, do you have all the information that you need to either A, purchase that item that you want to purchase, have that surgery that you're researching on, whatever it is that we're testing. Do you have the information that you need? We cannot assume that they do just because it's there. Have they interpreted it correctly? Take that extra step to make sure, okay, you've read this, you've told me that you've read it, what does it mean to you? Very important to understand. Okay, so know your users. Now, know your intention. What do you want your users to walk away with? Really have that clear. A lot of people, of course, start their design projects with goals. We always start with goals. But really get down deep into the details of what you need them to understand. Again, let's go back to our original example here. Think about this. Now we know what our goal is. We want to sway them. Let's say we want to persuade people to choose a certain earbud. We have control over designers to help influence this and information architects. Let's say I add something to this first one. Bestseller. That changes things a little bit, right? That helps you make a decision. How about this? Bestsellers. Let's put it into the architecture. Lots of things that can be done to persuade. A lot of good books on persuasive IA out there. Lots of things to think about. But think about what you want. What's your outcome? You have control over that. Let's look at some other examples here. This is a really interesting study. Okay, in 2011, there was a study done about the effectiveness of nutritional labels with teens, and if they understood really what a number of calories really equated to in terms of how much you had to exercise to get, to work off whatever, 100 calories or whatever it may be. Did they truly understand that? And this was done in West Baltimore, and what they did was they took over a convenience store, and for a month, they replaced all the nutritional labels with this. 19 minutes to work off that fizzy drink for running, 23 minutes for cycling, 13 minutes for swimming. And rather than having to think like, that drink's 300 calories, whatever, I can work that off. Can you really? Do you have that kind of time in your day to do it? And the results were staggering at the end of the month, looking at the teens and what they bought. And this really hit home. It's the same content. It's presented differently, and they're walking away with the right message that we want them to. They're not getting that from this, no way. If they look at it, this definitely hits home more. Now, we've seen this a bunch of times, right? The sugar cubes. What is 36 grams in a vitamin water? Which is ridiculous, by the way. Can you believe vitamin water has 36 grams depending on the flavor? I think that's appalling. But anyway, what does 36 grams mean to people? Might not mean much until they see it stacked in sugar cubes. Then that message starts to hit home as to what is really in that drink they're drinking. The message, they get it then. What message will resonate with your end users? How will they get your message? Oh, this one I really love. Okay, in 2009, there was a study that was done by Georgetown University, funded by the FDA, to understand the effectiveness of the Surgeon General's warning on a pack of cigarettes. And they were testing different warnings with gain-framed versus loss-framed messages. Let's take a look at some of the results here. They found that gain-framed messages worked really good for people that thought, they assumed quitting would be hard. Here's a gain-framed message. Quitting smoking reduces the risk of death due to tobacco. Reduces risk. It's a little more positive spin. Then they look at a loss-framed message. Smoking can kill you. Totally negative. But what was interesting is this message resonated more and worked more for people who thought, I can quit whenever I want. Who would have thought? Like, what messaging works? And don't assume that that messaging is going to work for all of your user groups. Talk to different user groups and find out what they are. And there is a lot that goes into defining a user group, and it's not demographics. Different talk. Okay? This is important. This is really important. What messaging and maybe different kinds will work for different kinds of end users. Now, brace yourselves. There's some ugly images coming. There was a third option that tested even better. Yeah, I know, I'm sorry. Mouth cancer is not pretty. Being dead, not pretty. Now, when you mix those with the loss and gain frame, smoking can kill you. Quitting smoking reduces the risk. The FDA fought so hard for this. They tested it and tested it. It was beyond more effective than any of those gain and loss frame messages on their own. But they didn't get passed. The tobacco industry totally sued them. They slapped them with so many lawsuits. The courts ruled with them. This is not happening for a long time, but they have not given up, and they're doing a lot more studies to get more research to get it passed. Other countries are getting closer to this. But you think this hits home? When I was putting this deck together, my 7-year-old, my poor 7-year-old, saw this. I was going to originally put that mouth cancer one, like full screen. He walks by, he's like, "What's that?" I'm like, "This is why you don't smoke." He's like, "Okay." He got the message. All right, so some of you might be sitting here and going, is this really my job? I'm an IA. I look at taxonomy all day, or I'm a designer. I just write copy. I'm a content strategist. I can tell you that, okay, it depends. You might work somewhere that's completely compartmentalized and you're siloed, and that's totally what you work on. There are other people that work in a shop where you're wearing 3 or 4 or 5 different hats. It doesn't matter. If you were to talk to Abby Covert, she would tell you that I don't care who is making these decisions in a company, and I don't care what their title is or their role, as long as someone cares enough to take the responsibility to do this, to design with intention, to think of the outcome. Doesn't matter who does it. And honestly, we are responsible for it. If you talk to Richard Saul Warman, okay? He thinks that IA is about how to choose the right way to present information, and he should have said content there. See, everybody uses that term wrong. How to present information and how to help people navigate through it. So if you need any justification as to why this is your realm, this is it. But it doesn't matter. Everybody should be caring about this and doing it. Okay, so I designed this presentation with the intention that you would walk away with 3 things. I'm going to say them again. Information is not content. None of us here create information. Only our end users create information. It's how they interpret the content. Okay? Know your intent. Know what you want them to do. Do you want to persuade them? Do you want to dissuade them? Okay? Know your users. Okay? I cannot stress this enough. You will be set onto a path of failure if you are not given all the information that you need about your end users. And if somebody's not giving it to you, go out and get it. Do some interviews on your own. It does not have to be formal. There's lots of ways to learn about your end users. There's qualitative, there's quantitative methods, there's remote research, tons and tons of options out there. There's no reason in this day and age why you cannot find your end users and talk to them. And if you can't, then you make sure to get buy-in from every project stakeholder that says, okay, we're building this with this assumption. And if this fails, if this design fails, then we all failed because none of us decided to check this assumption. Okay, so if you're interested in learning more, I think I've sold Abby's book here enough, but here it is again. Go get it, How to Make Sense of Any Mess. She spends like the first chapter or so really on this deep dive that I did on information. Really, that book is awesome for just getting into the nitty-gritty, really fun, complex information problems that we have to deal with, strategies for how to deal with them. Great book. Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion. That's a fascinating book, and I really suggest if anyone has to design something with trying to get someone to do something, it's a great book for that. As well as Pervasive Information Architecture, Andre Resmini, Luca Rositi, great book. But also, the IA Summit is happening next month in Vancouver. If you have never been, this is a fantastic conference. I've been going every year since 2005. It's one of the conferences that I just come back to every year. I'm a user researcher, but I still go here. Some people will say, oh, I'm a designer, I'm not going to go to an IA conference. It's a design conference, okay? There you will find talks on interaction design, user research, content strategy, everything. IA, of course, as well. And it's definitely worth it, and you have $50 off thanks to Brian and his wonderful work. So I did not intend to leave time for any questions because it's only a 30-minute talk. So thank you. But I do love questions. Reach out to me on Twitter, my website, Usable Interface, and I'll be happy to answer any of them.